one of the things I think that Joe Travers has done in putting this set together is really showing the contrast of the fall versus the spring bands. That's something that I think I didn't really understand prior to sitting down and listening to this stuff. It's like, oh, that's a really very different arrangements of things. But we should mention that there is a version of Inca Roads that starts this disc that is from the spring of 74. So it's not quite the epic arrangement that we find it in by the fall. Performances like Token of His Extreme. I'm sure we have an opinion over this early arrangement of Inca Roads because I know I do. I don't think it's as hot. But it's not quite the lounge version. It's not quite, the masterpiece that is the later versions. But I do like that about halfway through it starts to kind of reach toward that fall version. So what do we think of this Inca Roads that starts the disc?
I like the performance of itself a lot, like the solos on it, the way it sounds. I think the arrangement itself is not quite there yet, but it's almost there. And by the way, I do love the lounge versions. Actually, it makes me laugh a lot.
Yeah.
And
thank you, honey.
I have a hard time with them, but they're fun. Yeah. It's not something I listen to a lot.
Yeah, and I like the transition from the lounge version to the complex instrumental bit, like they do on the Roxy video. I think that and Redanzel it's very fascinating to hear how they morphed, Frank, because Inca Roads really became a completely different beast by the end. The arrangement was finalized.
Yeah,
and it is one of my absolute favorite Zappa songs. So every version of it is bound to have a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
And this version is pretty great. I think it's interesting to compare it with the one on Edinburgh, which is 2 months after this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Both great performances. It would be at its best in fall 74.
Right.
For me. But it's great that we get to hear this in this quality again. This song quality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have the same opinion. I don't think it's as amazing as it will be, but it's close. I think this and the Edinburgh, like the 10 Years of Mothers tour, the solo vamp for guitar, I think is pretty weak. Like it's kind of monotonous, and it doesn't. I don't think it inspires Frank to the amazing heights that he gets in the fall. But we do get like George Duke and Bruce Fowler soloing, and they both play amazing on this tune, and I love that. Like the second half is like the cream of the crop of this Inca Roads. That shit is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Frank put bits of Approximate in Inca Roads.
Yep, I think I caught that as well.
Yeah, boom bop, do bop. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more obvious on the 88 version.
Yeah.
When they do that and they do Staying Alive.
Yeah, it's great. So disc 4 and 5 is the Dayton, Ohio show from 20th of November 1974. And this is the classic 1974 lineup, the 6-piece, which is Frank Zappa, George Duke, Napoleon Murphy Brock, Tom Fowler, Chester Thompson, and Ruth Underwood. This is the last show of this year where Tom Fowler is playing bass, because the day afterwards he broke his hand playing football on some off time. And was replaced by James Birdleg's Humans. And Tom Fowler is heard off stage yelling the chord changes to Birdlegs while they're playing this material, which is quite a feat for both Tom Fowler and especially Birdlegs because of the difficulty of this material. That guy deserves a lot of credit for doing that. That's nuts. And what we have here is pretty much a iconic snippet of this amazing band. This is my favorite touring outfit of Frank's. The Roxy band are really close, and then maybe the 82 band, but this is like, for me, the cream of the crop stuff. I wish that the set was a little different, because I'm not a huge fan of Dynamo Hum and Camarillo Brillo. However, Inca Roads from this period is just like the best things to slice bread, but we do get that in other places in the catalog. I think for me, the highlight of the whole entire box set is Redunzel from this concert. It's a freaking masterpiece. It's unbelievable. My jaw was on the floor when I was listening to this. I cranked it up to maximum volume, was blaring it in my apartment. It was like, holy crap, this band is unbelievable. I just love everything about that recording. It's the cream of the crop. This show kicks butt. I do think the Village of the Sun, like we were hinting before, is not as great as the Roxy and the Colorado Springs arrangement because it's not as earnest. It's like lightning fast. It's like one of those things where Frank decided to speed the song up to double time, which becomes almost egregious in the 84 band, as I know a lot of people in the Zappa community hate.
Double speed and then a reggae breakdown in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Fortunately, we don't get a reggae breakdown this time.
Twirl that dread, Frank. Twirl that dread.
That's right. This band has a sound, like a really iconic sound, and like as soon as I put the disc on for the first time, it hit me immediately. Like the tush tush tush. Like everyone has a relaxed atmosphere. This band can play anything. They're totally comfortable with Frank and with the material, and they're having fun. And like you can like that oozes off the recording, and I love that. That's just a treat for me.
I enjoyed this show a lot. I didn't enjoy it as much as Colorado Springs, not consistently. I do think that there are certainly heights in this show that are incredible. One drawback for me is that I don't love this arrangement of Stingfoot. It's okay. Like Mike, I should say I do like Dynamo Hum, but I like the studio version the best. And this version isn't my favorite, and it's not my favorite version of Camarillo Brillo either. But other than that, the majority of the concert I think is fantastic. And I did mention also that the arrangement of Village of the Sun isn't my favorite. It kind of sounds like Frank's bored with it, and he's just trying to get through it. So I like the more sincere versions of that song. But the rest of it, there's not much that I could say. I think these are great versions of these tracks.
What do you guys think of the Pygmy Twylyte arrangement?
Any chance I get to hear Napoleon Murphy Brock just really shred? You know what I mean? Vocally?
Yeah.
I'm in. It's and that song, if you slow it down, it feels heavier, kind of like not to take us back to Colorado, but that Florentine Pogan, thank God he slowed it down for One Size Fits All.
Absolutely.
And turned it into like the big kind of big balls rock song that
it deserves to be.
Very majestic too.
But
it is majestic.
I think that the slower Pygmy Twylyte has its charms.
Yeah. That's my favorite arrangement too. And my favorite version is Helsinki. Because Frank goes nuts on the guitar solo.
That solo is godly. It's one of my favorite Frank solos.
I much prefer the faster versions here.
Is that right?
Yeah, like the Edinburgh version is my all-time favorite version, and the Colorado Springs one isn't too bad either. And of course, the funky version on Roxy and Elsewhere. I think
I like the funky version too.
Sure.
Yeah, and there are earlier versions than that on bootleg, which are pretty fun to hear. I think the slow version is pretty good for what it is. The arrangement is fine, but the reason I like hearing those versions is because Frank's guitar playing is sick. And Room Service, it became a standalone track, but it's actually the coda to Pygmy Twylyte.
That's right.
So it's great how they suddenly speed it up to that level of energy. So that works pretty well. So I do like it a lot, actually.
We also get, I think, interestingly, the ending of the Yellow Snow Suite is very close to the record, which is something that's very uncommon live. I don't think any other band that played this material did that. I might be wrong in saying that, but I don't think so. They did like an abbreviated version into Rollo in the late 70s. And then before, in the 73 band in like Sydney, Australia, they do the Margarine vamp, which is completely different than everything else that's on the recording here.
It's great to hear Father Oblivion at tempo. That really made me happy. And I love all the little inside jokes, picking on Ruth a little bit.
Ruth having to pee, yeah.
Ruth having to pee.
Oh,
she can't pee temporarily.
I love
on our
that.
show, Ruth has been thinking.
I'm just sad they didn't do the proper ending to Father Oblivion, because here they do the Ridanzo ending at the end of it. But there's a tape from like October 74 where they try to replicate the studio ending of it with the little laugh. The studio version of Father Oblivion ends with the little marimba thing and then Ruth's laugh. And they do that on stage, but it's deadpan, so it's not like ha ha ha. And I wish they had done that,
that
on
would have
Dayton
been great.
too.
Yeah.
Fall 74, I think it used to be my favorite tour. I'm not sure it is anymore, but it used to be my favorite tour. And I don't think it has yet to be well represented on the discography, because okay, let's leave Helsinki aside, because that's a studio. I mean, it's not a studio construction in the way that it's overdubbed, but Frank edited it. It put something together. The two shows that they picked for release, in one of them, Frank was sick with the flu. And then Dayton, it's a good performance. It's a good representation, but it's not really far out. It's a short show.
Yeah.
And my biggest pet peeve with it is that I'm glad, Mike, you mentioned Inca Roads, because my biggest pet peeve is that Inca Roads and Florentine Pogan are missing, which were pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, the highlights of that tour.
Yeah, Florentine's amazing too. I forgot about that. They ripped the hell out of that song.
This was basically picked because this was the last show with Tom Fowler, as you said, Mike. Mm-hmm. And this, unfortunately, answers a question that I had, that was whether the great Long Beach Arena show from New Year's Eve 74, which was the last show this lineup played, and Tom Fowler was back. That's a great show, and apparently, if Joe says so, it's not in the vault. And they played San Bernardino and California shows live, which they never did with this lineup.
Whoa.
Yeah. I was hoping we'd get that on a one size fits all box set, but
I didn't know Tom was back for that show either. I thought he was still out with his hand. Holy cow!
Now that's the final show. I mean, they did that show and then finished the one size fits all sessions, and then that band broke up.
We should talk about the 3 bonus tracks after this, the 4: the TV ad, the single edit, Göteborg GTR, and Approximate Bale edit. Which the Göteborg and Approximate are Zappa edits.
Mm-hmm. And mixes too, which
which is awesome.
Yeah, I like having those.
Yeah, the Approximate floors me. That shit is amazing. I listened to that I think 4 times in a row when I first heard it. It's just, Furious Abandon. That band is playing with Furious Abandon. It's awesome.
Well, it helps that the tape is sped up, by the way.
It also is sped up. Okay, it's also sped up.
I don't know if that's intentional or not, because it's not chipmunk speed, but it's very slightly sped up.
Yeah.
You can probably play along with it.
I'm a fan of any time they include vintage Frank mixes of anything. That was some of my favorite material on the Whiskey set too.
That was the highlight for me on that set too.
Yeah. So, and it's not here. It's not a highlight for me on this set, but I still am glad that it's here. And they're great performances. Now, one of these was something else, right? Was intended for another project?
Yeah, the guitar solo, what was the name here?
Göteborg.
Göteborg.
Yeah, Göteborg, because it was bootleg as Mountain Tits. So that's how I know it. That was on what is thought to be one of the sides of one of the version of the double LP versions of Zoot Allures, where it was Ship Ahoy, that guitar solo, and then the Hands with a Hammer drum solo. I don't know if that was supposed to be a Zoot Allures, but anyway, Frank assembled that sequence. So I had heard that solo, and it's great. I mean, Frank's playing on this period was
terrific.
hot.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to talk too much about the Blu Ray disc, because I covered it in my review. Suffice it to say, it's phenomenal. The Atmos mix that's the draw for me. I love multi-channel mixes. I had the first one I bought was Waka Wazoo, and I liked having those both on the same disc. And I was like, ooh, maybe they'll do Overnight Sensation Apostrophe together. And so when Overnight Sensation came out on its own, it's like, okay, great, but now. So when this was announced, I was like, all right, Atmos mix of Apostrophe, because I study those mixes constantly. I just sit and bask in them. And I explained to these guys when we talked last week that to me, 5.1 was very discreet. Like everything is in a different corner of the room, sort of like in the way quad could be. Whereas Atmos is like translating what a headphone mix might be to an environment.
Ooh.
And so stuff that sounds like it's like really low in your headphones, like backing vocals and stuff, are going to be coming a lot of times from the backing speakers. Now, what's interesting, because I've listened to the Apostrophe Atmos mix a couple of times here in the last week. What's interesting is that Frank's vocals are coming from the height speakers, so the ceiling, and the back simultaneously for the whole record.
Oh, whoa.
Wow,
so Frank's at the back of your head, and he's also on your ceiling for this, which I love. I love that kind of stuff. The other thing to point out is that that I didn't mention before is you do get kind of a presentation, a video presentation while you're listening to the various mixes on the Blu-ray, and you see somebody's hand come out and place the needle on the record, and right as the needle goes down, you hear the wind sounds and the album starts.
That's really cool.
It is
beautiful.
But they also cut in vintage photographs while you're listening, and like the bit where in Father Oblivion where it's you see shots of Frank like in sync with the music.
Nice.
That's so cool.
Which is really neat.
Wow.
Yeah. So I like that presentation of the Blu-ray, and you don't have to listen to the Atmos mix to enjoy this. You can listen to the stereo mix and get the visuals too. So, but yeah, there's not much to say other than that I'm thrilled that the quad mix is included. That's Frank's vintage mix. And it's cool to be able to compare that with the Atmos and 5.1. The other thing is the TV ad is here, and it's never looked or sounded better than this. I love that old ad. It's perfect for the album. So that was a great inclusion.
Yeah, it's fun to hear it on the CD, but I think you're missing if you're not watching it. You're missing out.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I think if I were to do an ad for our record, WTF Was That, I would want Kal Schenkel to do that exact thing. Because I love it so much, and I love vintage ads in general, but that one's oozing with charm.
Yeah, it's I love old 70s album commercials. I have a bootleg of a bunch of Kiss album commercials. And Zappa's were definitely more fun.
Then there's the Beefheart one, the lick my decals off baby ad. That's another classic one.
Yeah, I think it was banned from TV actually after a couple of airings. People complained. Yeah.
What is this?